Welcome everyone to the Collective Compass movement.
Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Leslie, the founder of the Collective Compass, and we are here with Laura on an episode of the Connected Collective discussions, and we are going to be talking about courage today. And it is such good timing because it's a new year. And so this year for me, I've been thinking a lot about courage because last year I was having to face so many fears and do so many new things that it made me kind of get into the zone of being more comfortable, being courageous. And so this year I know I need to do even more of that personally. And so to me, this year is the new year of courage. Courage is my word for the whole entire year. And so I'm excited to talk to you, of all people, about that specifically because I've watched your art career probably since elementary school. And wanting to get into that world myself, I've always thought it takes a crazy amount of courage. And so I'm excited to talk with Laura today about that. If you want to introduce yourself to everybody listening.
Hi, I'm Laura. I am a artist who has never quite been able to give up being an artist. I previously owned a print shop, Straw Hat Press, in Atlanta, Georgia, and closed that a few years ago to become a full-time gallery artist. And now I make abstract work and I take commissions for design work and portraiture and websites, and working on writing a couple of books. I had a significant injury a few years ago, and it led to me thinking about what I would regret not having done. And I wrote a fantasy novel when we were all locked down for COVID, and sent it out to an actual editor. And now I'm working on a rewrite, and we'll go through all the steps you go through to get rejected and, keep writing. I love the process.
That's really cool that you turned something that you experienced personally into a fiction story. So I think that could be honestly even more powerful way for people to connect to your story.
Yeah, we were talking about curiosity. I took a moment of really intense fear. I had a concussion. At one point, I had doctors telling me that I was going to go blind, and I took that fear and realized that the regret I would have would be not writing a book. It wasn't about art. I had accomplished a lot of really big goals in my art career. I'd shown internationally. I'd opened a print shop. I'd worked with my heroes, but I had never explored my love of fantasy fiction. So I became curious, and I started following my favorite authors' blogs. Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman was actually a really big influence because he has a really beautiful way of making writing seem accessible, which led to me rereading Stephen King's On Writing. There were lessons that I had learned in the art world. When you're an artist, a professional artist, what they don't tell you is that 90% of your time is spent applying to what amounts to college applications and submitting and getting rejected. And that's the biggest fear most writers have, is submitting and getting rejected. That's my everyday.
Yes.
Learning new things, I had a lot of moments when I didn't know. I have a very vivid memory of having an opportunity to work on a project with a very large name artist, and that it was a lithograph. And I am not as familiar with lithographs as I am with etchings. They're two different processes in the printmaking world. And wiping a lithograph for a professional print run is a very specific skill, and you can do it wrong and mess up hours and hours of work, which amounts to thousands of dollars. And I had to learn how to do it and to be able to help out on this project. And I had learned that learning something new is actually very simple. You watch somebody do it, or you have somebody teach you how to do it the right way. You do it yourself. You do it wrongly. You try to get some feedback on how to do it better. And then you literally do it 100 times. And that's not an exaggeration.
Right.
You do it 100 times. And when you've done something, for example, a blank piece of paper to me holds no fear for me anymore. I have stared at 1,000 pieces of blank paper. I have stared at probably 1,000 pieces of artwork of my own that I loathe. And I have torn them up, burned them, started over, done everything you can. And it's that familiarity that makes it not scary. And we are so blessed. I mean, the resources that people have access to now just blows. I mean, I can't even, Leslie, can you imagine if we had the YouTube videos,
me and my boyfriend talk about this every single day. I was like, every single day, I'm serious. I'll say at some point, if I would have had YouTube when I was in high school, it would have been over with. I don't know what it would have been, but it would have been over with.
If there's an area in my career where I don't feel like I'm as adept, photography, for example, I was used to shooting a very specific type of studio photography. And I really felt like I just couldn't wrap my head around f-stops and what they meant and how they affected my camera. I put my rear end online and figured it out and played with it and tested it, and I'm better than I was. Same for, I taught myself how to use Procreate this last year because
that's intense.
Why not? I mean, but why not? You know.
Well, let me ask you, the lithograph print. How did that go? How did that end up turning out with that artist? Was there would it end up going smooth, or?
Do you want the shorter story or the longer story?
I would love the long story, and if I need to, I can edit it into a shorter one. But just for me personally, let's go with the long story.
So, printmaking. It's an older art form. There is a difference between I want to make a print of my artwork, and I am a professional artist who wants to work with a master printer. And that difference is, in one area, you have the knowledge and you're applying it to a medium with your understanding and limitations. And the other is you're taking your artwork, your vision, and you're working with somebody who is a professional in that craft to help you make that vision come to life. A lot of people mistakenly think that prints are just copies like you would get from a printer. That's not the case. Prints are handmade, original pieces of artwork that are very intense. They are very technically difficult. It is I think photographers are known for being a bit neurotic, and photographers consider printmakers to be even more so.
I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure it ever even occurred to me. I'm not sure that I even still, until I've heard you talk about printmaking, that I even thought about that side of it. And it seems like all the torture in a lot of ways. But I do know about getting in that zone. And it's really funny that you're talking about this. But when I tell you what I was processing the other day about how I thrive under chaos, you might be able to identify with that. Because there is some sort of, because you chose to do this.
Yeah.
And so the challenge of it is, in fact, enjoyable, and why is very cool. And I think that if more people can tap into the fun of the challenge, which makes you probably real neurotic when it's got to be so technical, like the kinds of things that you're talking about doing, and I definitely want you to pick back up where you left off on that process. But I'm excited to tie that into something I was processing the other day.
Okay, cool. So what brought me to it was I kind of love looking behind the scenes. So I love prints. There's a quality to the drawing art form, the color, all that is inherent in the medium. And I wanted to learn more. And that's what led me, from, I want to try to pull print to master printing. So this brings me to the story. I was in graduate school in Atlanta. Our head of our department said he was working on bringing in a big name artist, but he couldn't discuss it. It was probably going to be a process called a photogravure. To be very quick, photogravures are...
I would hate to even try to spell that, just so you know.
Photogravures are, it's when you develop a photo negative onto copper. It creates these beautiful, deep, black, rich, velvety blacks you can't get with any other photography method. We can do this in color and get these incredibly beautiful multi-color photos that are not like any photo you've ever seen. I'll send you links.
I would love to see some of the ones that you love. I can only imagine the way you would have to explain how that works. Wow. Yeah.
I'll point you to Crown Point Press. But so anyway, I was desperate to get on this project, and Photogravure wasn't my wheelhouse, but it was my best friend in grad school's wheelhouse. And I just showed up when the artist showed up, and I made sure I was always hanging around my professor's office, working extra hours just in the studio, making sure I said, I made sure my ass was there. This was short and
your ass was there and your face was known.
Yes. And I was not alone. There were about 6 of us that all did this, but I was the one that was so obnoxious that when not just the artist, Kiki Smith, who you might know, was there. And
which explains why you were desperate to get on the project. You were like, This is it. If I can do this, I can die happy and I'm good.
Yes.
I don't even
I love her work. She has an amazing take. She is a fierce woman. And I really wanted to get to know her. One of my blessings in the art world is every single one of my heroes that I've met. And there's a wonderful story about that is the end of the story. Every single one of my heroes that I've met in the art world have been wonderful people, hardworking, wonderful people. And so it was Kiki, her dear friend and often collaborator, Valerie Hammond, and their friend, Krista. Krista's gonna kill me. Cotier, I'm mispronouncing her last name. Kiki, obviously an American female artist icon. Valerie, same. Krista went on to create the Working Artist Program, which is a resource for artists to build their art career. And I got to spend weeks with all 3 of them working on 6 different prints. I eventually became the assistant project manager. I was made master printer on my own project, Valerie.
Wow.
I got to pull prints on every single one of those 6 and now have a print from each one of those.
Which you'd probably grab first if anything caught on fire.
Yes, that would be the number one thing I would grab. And they, some of these prints have been bought by museums. I got to watch Kiki, she had some, not ailments, but she was in a lot of pain while she was working with us one time. And she had had no sleep. She was exhausted. She had worked 14 hours that day with us. She went from that to a meeting with the board of the High Museum, discussing her work and arguing for why her father's artwork should be on display in the High Museum. It was one of the most inspirational moments I've ever seen. And it was those glimpses behind the art world that have propelled my own curiosity. I mean, Leslie, if I hadn't just been pushy, I wouldn't have gotten to talk to Kiki Smith about my own artwork.
Mm-hmm.
If I hadn't been pushy, I wouldn't have a wonderful friendship with Krista. I wouldn't have a Kiki Smith hanging in my living room that I pulled, that I talked to her about. I know it was a crazy project. It was a project none of us should have taken on. It was outside the scope of anything we were capable of doing. But I learned.
Yes, the professor had some good connections.
He is a incredible advocate for his students.
You know, sometimes when you just get thrown into the fire like that, it's the situation you kind of get the most value out of.
It was his heart and his determination that made that project happen. And there were tons of mistakes and misfortunes that happened along the way, as there always are with big projects. He led us through all of them. And he let me be the assistant that kind of helped make sure everything happened. And it gave me, you know, my plan after graduate school was to try to apply to one of the many, there's probably 50 print shops in the States. And a lot of those are associated with universities, but to decide to open my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful I did it, because it's not what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
I love making my own work. I
wouldn't think that you would probably have the energy and time to do both as well as you would want to.
Exactly. That was exactly what happened. But I got to learn that by doing it. After my head injury, I really didn't know if I was ever going to be able to pull print again. And I had my own press in my studio, and I've been looking at it for weeks going, I don't know if I need to sell you or not. Just this week, I sat down and I made a list of all the steps that I needed to take to pull print. Not a good print, bad print, ugly print, really ugly print. But I did
that
it.
you notice all the problems with.
Yeah, but I did it because I did do those things. I did learn how to correctly wipe the litho plate.
To this day have to still practice massage on somebody, which, you know, it's obviously not too hard to find volunteers. And I have, you know, 4 other people in the house with me that will line up when I'm actually getting the table out. But it's really hard for me to do the work that I do if I don't keep practicing doing massage, and I will actually miss doing it. You know, at the end of the day, if it's just benefiting you mentally to do it, then that's enough reason, you know.
What I really found empowering, truly just this week, was I sat down and I said, I'm going to write out every single step I need to do to pull this one print. And I took it in small chunks. You know, what's the first step? Pull out my paper. What's the next step? Pull out my felts. Make sure I make ink. Instead of tackling this thing that was, can I pull a print after this injury? You know, after I've had 3 years of Botox injections into my neck and shoulders to atrophy the muscles. It was, I have trouble watching football games. I'll say that. I have a new appreciation for concussions.
Because every time you're like, oh God, I felt that. What are they doing?
No, it's like, that could change your life. But Leslie, I pulled 2 prints, you know, on my press in my studio. You know, I did a lot of portrait work when we were in high school. And
yeah, because I was into that too. That's why I always noticed kind of what you were doing, and I was like, oh God, she's really good at that. And I would like figure out how are you doing that?
You know what? I'm gonna drag you up. We can cut this part, but you're gonna come up here and we're gonna have a play day in studio.
That would be so legendary. I still have my actual portfolio from high school under my bed right now. You know, I remember that that was just something that I always knew that I wouldn't want to forget what it looked like.
You know what astounds and frustrates me is that I talk to so many of our classmates who talk about how much they love taking art classes, or how much they enjoyed it, or how good they felt when they did it. And every single time I'm like, I would love for you to come to my studio, spend a day, a week, a month, whatever, and make work. And I'll if you need help, I'll help. If you don't want any help, I got extra paper, I've got extra paint.
Yeah, like, that would be so cool. I've always
but
wanted
nobody's
to
taken me up on it.
Oh well. Listen.
Nobody. I think
I'm happy to be the first.
We're talking about courage, and I think that people are intimidated to talk to people they know that do something that they think that they know people who they think do something better than they might do. But how much I would love to have somebody just be in the room with me and just to be like, damn it, this isn't working, or I love this paper, feel this paper. That was the best part about being in a print shop, was you're surrounded by people with the same complaints.
And the same excitement for all the little things that makes your day like the best, like you said. I mean, I definitely am somebody that could appreciate just being like, feel the paper, you know. I'm like that every time not every time, but when I get really in the zone to cook dinner, I get like that with food. Because I actually decided at one point that I was going to look into going to culinary school in Atlanta, but that was like in 2007, and I was working in a restaurant, and I was thinking realistically what my schedule of life would be like, and I was like, no, I just like to cook well. It's so fun to be able to enjoy the little details of whatever you enjoy with somebody else around you.
Taking the leap to write has been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. Taking the leap, do portrait again, and enjoy how much it sucks and how hard it is. And I mean, you start really thinking about how many muscles there are in a facial structure and how just the tiniest change can make a huge difference.
You remember in 6th grade when half my face got paralyzed?
I do.
I know that all too well.
I have a vivid memory of that in the lunchroom. I don't know why the lunchroom.
Lunchroom was when we actually had time to talk about it. What was also funny was we had some kind of global cultures type class assignment, and I was assigned China. So I had this kimono and half my face was paralyzed, and we had to have all of our pictures put on the board.
I do not remember that those 2 days were the same day. I remember
they were the same.
I remember
day.
Both those things.
Because I had to smile in a picture at school, and it was up on the board for the rest of the year.
Oh, you poor thing. Oh my God. Oh, school.
The flip side to me saying if I would have only had YouTube, the flip side is if that would have been on social media, it would have been viral. And I would have probably been even more traumatized. So it's a double-edged sword.
It's true. Thank you for that, because you've reminded me that I didn't tell the best part of the story.
Right.
The best part of the story is how all of this ended, which was showing the artwork. When we showed the artwork, there was a show on that was Kiki Smith and Valerie Hammond, and my art hero, Julie Maratu, and her spouse, whom I also love as an artist. Kiki Smith introduced me to my all-time favorite artist in the world. Wow. And I get to have that memory. She also gave me a kiss the last time I saw her. So I have these two memories that if I hadn't been pushy because I just wanted to be there, I wouldn't have gotten. Leslie, I mean, if I hadn't just been stubborn as all hell because I loved something, I wouldn't have gotten it. And it relates to what I was gonna say, was it breaks my heart a bit when classmates say, I loved art, but I wasn't that good, or whatever their excuse is, whatever it is that is holding them back, that fear. And I just want to grab them and shake them and say, you have to do it badly. You have to. And once you stop being afraid of doing it badly and remember why you wanted to try it at the first place, that's the magic. And I promise you, there are people out there that are good at it. There was nothing more than to let you sit by them and watch them. And you know, if you send them a message and they say no, there are more people out there that love what they do and would love to talk to or just have someone else around who's at least curious about what they do. You know, I want to hug every kid who wants to go to art school and say, try everything. You may not end up as an artist. You may, but that's not what it's about. Art is a massive umbrella of so many things. Inclusion instead of exclusion is the path forward. It's funny, but the higher up in the art world you get, the more you realize.
You just want to be in class with your...
The artist I mentioned, Julia Muratu, when you're that big an artist working on that big a project, you have people that work for you. And she, for example, has somebody who is a professional car painter, because that person, she needs that level of shine, that you know, beautiful flat color, and that's somebody's job. You never know how you're going to get access to the things you love.
Growing up, that was always something that I thought to myself, because it seemed like I would make some sort of assumption and plan that was my strategy forward. And then when it didn't, some parts of it would go according to plan and other parts wouldn't. And so I never really had the approach of like just being so stubborn. Well, that didn't work. I would be like, okay, well, that didn't work, but this did, and just still try to figure out, you know, the next move forward. So it didn't ever really occur to me to get discouraged if the whole entire plan didn't work out. I saw that a lot in film making, and I would watch things like behind the scenes, you know, putting together some movie. And when you see all the different jobs that go into making one movie, it's like
1 minute,
no matter.
One scene.
I know, especially an animated movie. It's like there is so much that goes into putting together that type of production, and there's so many different ways to make art mediums, styles. I mean, probably the biggest category of all things you can do in life, you know, can fall into art. And so it just seems like somebody that's thinking that they can't find what they're good at just needs to try everything, like you said, because you really don't have any clue how it's actually going to connect until you start doing the stuff, which you have to have courage for, obviously, because it seems to be like the most amount of energy that you need at one time to go from, I call it potential energy and kinetic energy. When we're sitting around getting all these ideas, it takes more energy to go from potential energy to kinetic energy, where you're in motion, just to ignite it. It takes more energy just to light the spark than it does to keep it going in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that momentum now. You know, there's always more. Something that I have learned is that going from potential to kinetic, the way you're talking about it, a lot of people get stuck with the dream of the potential not looking like what the kinetic is. And they forget.
Yeah, I'm very guilty of that.
But it's so easy to forget that the potential doesn't need to be created in its perfect form in the real world. You need to fall in love with that dreaming of potential, and you need to fall in love with the failing of the kinetic, and allow that to be not only enough, but be kind of the magic that drives you forward. Because we fail. We're going to fail. We're going to fail a lot. And the truth is that if you're not failing, you're probably doing something wrong.
So I love that you associate having humility with having courage. All the momentum around self-help and self-healing, and just because of what we know now about mental health and all of the work that we're doing to better our mental health, I think has helped people start to really assess whether they're making choices that are good for their mental health or not, because there's always that lifestyle factor. You know, it's through experience a lot of times that we learn about humility, because I value humility so much, and I feel like it's so important to live your life, or how you choose to make a decision. You know, factoring in humility is so important. When you were talking about courage, you included humility in that. And I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, since we've already talked about confidence and we've already talked about curiosity. The third element of having courage was also humility.
There's been a lot of humility in my life. And there's, I think from the outside, people see courage. From the inside, my courage feels more like a need to be me. Need may not be strong enough of a word there. I have to be myself. Things go badly when I'm not. Recently, I was feeling some struggle within my career. I reached out to Krista, I mentioned earlier. You know, now this world famous guide to helping artists in their careers. And it was really just an email you'd send to a friend. You know, hey, I'm having a rough time. And she responded with, you know, let's talk. It's so good to hear from you. It's warmth, kindness, friendship. It took courage to reach out to somebody that I respect a lot and who I've seen do amazing things with her life. But it took a lot of humility too to be that vulnerable. The next steps in my career are going to take that humility too. I've never written a book. I have many things that I want to do to be an even more successful artist. And it takes looking at where you are now and saying, I want more. And that's okay. Me wanting more is okay. But to get that more, I may need to ask for help. I may need to seek out help. I may need to go to somebody that I'm a little bit afraid of to find my path. I have ASD. Communication has always been a struggle. Meeting with people is a struggle. It took a lot of time for me to recognize that me being built the way I am, my mind working the way it is, doesn't mean that I don't like people, that I can't connect with people. It just means that I do it differently. I need different things. The more open I've been about that, you know, the more I've asked for patience or grace with that, the response has been beautiful. Humility, I think, is also recognizing that no's are okay. I submitted to, I don't know, 10, 15 shows, exhibitions, residencies, grants last year. I didn't get any of them. It happens, you know? Do I think now I'm an unsuccessful artist? No, there were wonderful things that happened for me in art last year. Wonderful things that happened in my life last year. Ironically, Stephen King was right. And I started keeping my rejection letters. I have a pile of them. I look at them and I remind myself, yeah, I applied for the Hopper Prize and was rejected. And it's kind of cool. I did that. You know, I've applied for things that I thought I was a shoo-in for and been rejected. And I've applied for things that I didn't think there was a chance in anything I was going to get into. You know, I'm grateful for our conversation. It's reminding me I need to get back out there and do it again. It's hard. It's hard to get rejections constantly, but am I going to stop? You know, good luck trying to stop me.
Right.
And nothing's worked yet. Acknowledgement is the first step of courage.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing, I think that seeing that something is dysregulated, seeing that something is painful, accepting that your knee hurts, back hurts, you're exhausted, is the first step of courage. Because it is, for me at least, the most frightening part is acknowledging that something is wrong, because it means that there is that action step.
Yeah, absolutely.
To follow. And that acknowledgement is so important and so powerful, because you can't decide on those actions until you've seen that something, maybe even something's not wrong, but something could change. Something could be not as it currently is. And I think that the older we get, the more we see in our parents and ourselves, that change is not something we are programmed to like.
Yeah, that's for sure. Unless we actively try to reprogram that. Our first step at the Collective Compass is self-awareness skills. That is the part that can feel the most painful, because after that comes the solutions. So we start with self-awareness, we go to perspective, and then strategic action, right? But the self-awareness skill part has to come first. And I definitely could not agree with that more. For me, when you're talking about how you just want to, how your heart really can hurt for people that don't give themselves the permission to just enjoy the process and just do the art and just make the first bad piece. My thing like that is people just not wanting to see if there's some sort of thing that they can do differently to feel better. Just sharing stories about being courageous is part of the solution. The most important thing at the root of our conversation has been just really encouraging people to know their authentic self, to fight for that, and to be pushy, and to be pushy in honor of yourself. Just excited for you and love everything that you're always working on. It's always inspiring for me, just being rooted in, artistic inspiration. And I just love and appreciate so much that you were here having this conversation with me today, because I feel like this year can be such a life-changing year for so many people that are willing to be courageous in their own lives, and that are willing to just trust the process and show up and just, be pushy. I love it when I can hear a word that I normally have a negative association with it, and then all of a sudden my perspective shifts to now where it sounds so much more positive.
I'll hold you to coming up to the studio and making
I can't wait. Now, I don't have a concept of what I would love to start working on yet, but that's what I'm going to be thinking about. And it's going to take a lot of courage because it's been a really long time and I'm super rusty, but
who says you need
it'll be fun.
You just need to show
that's
up.
True. See, that's why I love you. Who says I need a concept? Bam. And with that, we're going to end the conversation. Who said you even need a concept? Oh my gosh, Laura, that was epic. Thank you so much for sharing. You guys are listening to the Connected Collective Discussions, sponsored by the Collective Compass Movement and Lil Mo Films LLC. Thanks again, Laura, and we'll talk to you soon.